Susan here again, and welcome back to my kitchen. Tonight I am going to be making peanut butter cookies. These are a favorite in our house and don't last long, trust me. But it's a very simple recipe, and I'm doing some substitutions tonight because I don't have certain items, but I've done this way all the time, so I know it works. I will leave the recipe in the description box below, so don't worry about taking notes while I'm doing this. Just know that it will be there for you to print off or write down at your leisure. Anyway, let's get started. This is fairly simple. You mix wet ingredients and you mix dry ingredients, then you add the dry to the wet. So that's pretty straightforward. Now, I've pre-measured everything just for the ease of this video. And what we have here to start with is 1 cup of peanut butter and 1 cup of butter or margarine, your choice. But we add those into the wet ingredient bowl. Now, as always, I have washed my hands. Always start with clean hands when you're cooking. Okay, next up we have another wet ingredient, which is 2 eggs. Now, these are 2 large size eggs. I find they're adequate. They're just the right amount for this recipe. And you add them in to the wet bowl. Okay, now that is all I have for this bowl at the moment. The recipe does call for 1 teaspoon of vanilla, but that is a optional ingredient, so if you don't have it, don't worry about it. It's minor. If you do have it, sure, add it in. It just adds that little boost of flavor. And not to worry, when I start this mixer up, I will mute the sound on the video, so don't worry. Now that is the wet ingredients pretty well incorporated. Now for the dry ingredients. First off, we have this is part of the substitution. I don't have 1 cup of brown sugar because it calls for 1 cup of white and 1 cup of brown. So what I do is I substitute for all white. So 2 cups of sugar go in. And this is 2.5 cups of all-purpose flour. And that goes in the dry ingredient bowl. There's that. And now we add 1 teaspoon of baking powder. Level, like so. And 1 teaspoon of baking soda, again, level, like so. There we go. And 1/2 teaspoon of salt. And there we go. Now, in order to mix these dry ingredients together, I find a whisk does quite adequately because it gets right in there and mixes it through without too much mess or fuss. You're just looking to make sure that these are evenly distributed through the bowl, so when you do add it to the wet ingredients, you're going to be adding completely all the way through. You're not going to have pockets of one thing or another. It's going to be pretty even. Okay, now I have my oven preheating. It's up to temperature actually for 350 degrees Fahrenheit. These cookies take 12 to 15 minutes to bake. Depending on your oven, you're going to have to do some trial and error. If your oven's hot, I'd go towards the lower end of the timing. And if it's not quite as hot as it should be, then I'll, of course, adjust it up. This recipe makes approximately 7 dozen cookies. So you're going to have cookies for a while. They can be frozen in a freezer-proof container there. And they should be good in the freezer for, I would say, maybe a month, month and a half. I wouldn't leave them longer than that because then you'd start losing the quality. So let's start working on this and add the dry to the wet, and you do this in stages, obviously, to help mix it in better. Going to scrape down the sides of the bowl and make sure it all gets in there. And you have your batch of cookies. And there we are. Now, I'll stop the video here and I'll be right back with them on the cookie sheet. And I'm back. As you can see, I've got most of the dozen laid out on the baking sheet. I simply have a piece of parchment paper on the sheet. You can, of course, use it without it, but I prefer parchment paper. These cookies contain enough butter or margarine plus the peanut butter that they won't stick, so the cookie sheet does not need to be greased if you choose to not use a parchment paper, but I do. This is about the spacing, and as you can see, it's a teaspoon worth of dough. Just drop it on the sheet, and they're about 2 inches apart to allow for spreading. Now they'll go into the oven for, as I said, 12 to 15 minutes, and I'll go ahead and stop the video here and do all of this baking. I won't take up your time, but I'll be right back with some baked cookies, and I'll let you know what the timing was for my batch tonight. And we're back with the results of the cookie baking tonight. I put some on a plate here to show you. These were 13 minutes timing, and this was 14 minutes. As you can see, it's quite a bit darker and it's a little bit stiffer. So these are softer and this is going to be crunchy. So most of them were 13-minute timing. The recipe says it does 7 dozen, and I got 5 dozen of this size. I hope you've enjoyed this video. If you did, please give it a like, and if you got any questions or comments, please leave them below. I try to get to every single one I get. And thanks for joining me again. See you in the next video.